if you had 3 kids in the same household, which gravitate towards dad's music and which, you know, would shy away from that. And how did you feel about your dad's the music that your dad was making? Because
I mean, to be honest, because you can't think that, you know, I was young and didn't, you know, appreciate blast beats and growls vocals, but to be honest, I was such, you know, I was used to it so much that didn't even think twice. That was just, you know, my reference of music. You know. So I think if you start that early, it could end up like that, you know, because I didn't have a reference of, you know, whatever mainstream music it was, or maybe I had, but it was just music, you know. And that sticks with me today, you know. For me, it's only 2 types of music, and that's good and bad music, you know.
Greetings, Legion. Welcome to episode 259 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, my guest is Mateo Tervonen of the band Sarcator. He is their guitarist and vocalist. At the ripe old age of 19, he has put out no less than 3 full-length albums, the most recent of which is Sarcator's record, Swarming Angels and Flies. He also happens to be a second-generation metaler, the son of Marco Tervonen of the legendary Swedish band The Crown. And we spoke not only about Sarcator, but also about Marco's influence on his son's career, how Mateo got to discover metal, and much, much more. It's coming your way very shortly. But before we get to that, we need us some unsanctioned filth. We look towards London for that this week, and a band called Corpsing, who should be familiar to many, particularly long-serving members of the Legion, as I've had their guitarist Giusepe Cutispoto on the podcast twice previously. They've got a brand new EP out called Viewing the Invisible, which I absolutely love. I think you guys can enjoy it as well. And so for your listening pleasure, and featuring the guest vocal stylings of one Jason Mendonça of Acrococker, this is Corpsing with Be the Back.
Close the door, close the
Be the Pack is the name of the song you just heard, the band Corpsing. The song features the vocal stylings of Jason Mendonça of Acricoca, and the EP from whence it is taken is called Viewing the Invisible. It's available on Bandcamp right now. If you feel compelled to go and check out the other 4 tracks on that EP, then head over to Bandcamp. Let the Corpsing lads know who it is who sent you. And if you did like it, good news too, because Giusepe Cutispoto of Corpsing is going to be my guest on the news rant later on in this episode. We're listening to new tracks by Dormant Ordeal. This Gift is a Curse. Istapp. We're talking about some of our favorite live death metal frontmen, and much, much more. Always great catching up with him. That's coming up later on in the show, as I said. My friends, as you should very well be aware, when you are done listening to this episode of Into the Necrosphere, there is no need for you to stagger around your house confused, crying yourself to sleep and wondering how you're going to survive 7 days until the next episode of Into the Necrosphere. And that is because my friends in the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse have got you covered from Monday to Sunday. On a Monday, we've got Brandon Legion with another episode of Horrorwolf 666. Yours truly, Jackie Smith, casts, hexes, and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere every Tuesday. My guest next week is going to be AV of the band Abduction. This is going to be his 4th appearance on the show, considering the fact that Abduction are just about to drop what, in my opinion, is the best thing they've ever done. I thought it was high time I got the young man back on, and I think this is probably our best episode to date. On a Wednesday, we've got Sensei Mike Hill with his long-running podcast, Everything Went Black. We also have Cheyenne, the Middle Eastern marauder, frontman for Trivax, my brother from another mother, with his podcast, Iblis Manifestations. On a Thursday, Mike Hill returns alongside his co-hosts, Outlaw Mike Scondado and the Professor Jeff Kashid. The podcast in question, Necromaniacs, one of my favorite shows of the week, always super entertaining, super informative, a great way to get yourself a movie lined up for the weekend ahead. And of course, also on a Thursday and again on a Sunday, we've got Soul Knox, hosted by the Sinister Minister Carl Haikara. It is a curated tour through the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric. So that wraps that up. A reminder, if you've not already done so, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, follow me on the socials. If you really want to show your love and support to the podcast over and above just doing all those lovely things, then head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store, pick yourself out a t-shirt or a hoodie, and I have mentioned this previously, but this year I'm making a point of ensuring that there's something special for people who stick it out right until the very end of an episode. And this week, if you are watching this on YouTube, you'll see I'm wearing an Antichrist Imperium t-shirt. If you like the Antichrist Imperium, make sure you check out you stay until the very end of the show, because I've dug up something a little rare and what I think is absolutely brilliant. Bear in mind, the last song on this episode, or on this podcast, is only for the tough, only for the real ones. So if you're of sensitive disposition, you probably want to drop off well in advance of that happening. But if you're not, stick around until the very end. For now, though, sit back and welcome a great guy and a future legend, Mateo Tervonen of Sarcator. I had paid some attention to Sarcator when you guys put out Alcahest, and that was partly because Black Line Records they started getting. I mean, I know they've been around for a while, but they started getting very prolific around kind of middle of COVID, towards the back end of COVID times. So I was sort of paying a lot of attention to the releases they were putting out, and I was like, it's a good record. Didn't necessarily go back to it again until the new album came out, and then when I knew I was going to talk to you, I'd noticed you were, you looked, you didn't look like an old goat like me, like one of the old bulls. So I noticed on the video that you might be a little young, and then when I looked you up on Metal Archives, I noticed that you're 19 years old, and I was like, holy smokes! So, yeah, dude, you've done incredibly well for a guy who hasn't even celebrated his 21st birthday yet. and I say that as a massive compliment, and I guess maybe first question is, how do you feel now that Swarming Angels and Flies is out? it seems to be getting, at least from my observation, way more attention than the previous two records. And there seems to be real excitement around Sarcator.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It feels really good. Not to trash talk the previous albums in any way, but yeah, it really felt, especially on the release day, it really felt like a release day, that with all the build up was like very rewarding, for the album, because on the previous records it's almost like it gets this empty feeling, when it gets released, like, was that it, but on the first record, we couldn't play live, and now we're getting shows booked. So yeah, things are trembling. It really feels like that. And now it's been out for like 2-3 weeks, and read some very good reviews on the album, and people seem to like it. Yeah, cool.
Also, just announced, which I imagine you are super excited about. You're touring Eastern Europe with 1349, the Ruins of Beverast, and Vitriol.
That's right.
And Ruins of Beverast musically, I'm a enormous fan of.
Cool.
Live, maybe not so much. 1349, massive fan. Vitriol, massive fan. I had Raven from 1349 on here last year, and Idar, and I've had Carl from Vitriol on. So you're going to be in pretty good company as well. But yeah, that is surely the biggest tour that you guys have been on thus far.
Yeah, it is, and it's sort of the third tour ever, or at least the second one in Europe. Also, we did the first tour last summer with Hellripper and Cloak from the US, which was also an amazing run.
Shout out to Scott Taysom from Cloak.
Yeah.
A fucking cool man's man, if ever there was one.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was such a great experience for us, and it was a great feeling that the first, tour was with, a band. For us, Hellripper inspired us very much in the beginning. And that was a great feeling because, if you're open to play, you could end up with whatever band, it's no like... it's not sure that you will end up with a band that you sort of is in sync with, both personally and musically, But that was a good run. And then, we did like a Swedish thing where we played like weekends with a couple of youth bands in the Swedish scene. And now to play some really cool countries for this summer, it's going to be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
We got some Greece, Turkey, it's cool as fuck.
So I think the one thing that, as we kind of talk about the fact that you're still relatively young, I think one thing that can't be overlooked is the fact that you are technically from metal royalty as well. So as I learned on Metal Archives, Marco of the Crown is your dad. So I'm a father myself, so this has been a topic of conversation a lot on the podcast, is around parenting. My daughter is 10 years old, turning 11, really interested in music, and loves to sing, and takes regular singing lessons, is taking part in all sorts of competitions. Not sadly the kind of music that I approve of, but eventually, she will learn, or she will be disinherited. But I've always been curious as to, what gets people into stuff like especially from, and as I talk to fellow parents on the podcast a lot about this, like, what do you see your kids doing? What are they getting into, and things like that. What I'm fascinated by is the opportunity to talk to somebody about this from the other perspective, from your own perspective. And I guess first question to ask you is, just on a personal level, how did your journey towards becoming a musician, towards discovering, and towards discovering metal, how did that start?
Oh, it started very early. I as far as I can remember, I've always known how to play guitar, so it's very early. Can you
remember how old you were when you first picked up a guitar?
I think when I picked up a guitar, it was probably like around 3 years old, but I got a guitar for Christmas when I was like 5 or 6 or something like that. So it started very early, and of course having music in my home, that sort of sown the seed, so to say. But you know, that's not a sort of thing that automatically leads you on that track. You know, I could have ended up in a football team. You know, you never know. But my parents sort of saw like something there with me being drawn to music. You know, I had my Metallica DVDs, the live shows, which I always constantly had on the TV, and I stood in front of it and acted like I was Kurt. So I had my plastic guitars, and then they bought me sort of a cheap guitar just to see if there was an interest, and sure it was. Yeah.
How old were you when you discovered Metallica?
Oh yeah, I mean like 3, 4, 5, around that. You know, it's always been played in the car and on the TV. You know, so. And
how did you discover them?
Through my parents, basically.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's still my favorite band of all time. You know.
Yeah.
That's a fucking band I can talk for hours. You know.
Yeah.
That's sort of my main band in my life, so to say.
Well, they're a band that have come up an awful lot on this podcast, as you can imagine, and recently, sure. Particularly because of you know, how they play live and how they do things. I said, when it comes to the live experience, I realize now as I've grown older and I see how bands have changed. I realize that I was spoiled by the fact that my introduction to, and it wasn't the first band that I actually physically saw live, but you know, what I was schooled on was James in his prime on stage, you know, with a beer in his hand, yelling at the audience, and just being the absolute man. Because in my view, you know, and I'm curious to what DVDs you were referencing here, but like, you know, Live Shit was the first thing that I got. I remember it was one of the most exciting days of my life when I got hold of that. But you know, seeing the Seattle show, the 1989 show, and then that show in it wasn't Mexico City was the CDs. I think it was San Diego was
San Diego 92.
Yeah. It's just like him and the entire band from a live perspective just set such a high bar. And I kind of feel like nowadays almost every single band, or anyone who wants to start a band, if you want to play live, you should be forced to watch that show at least 20 times and go like, this is how it's done. Turning your back on the audience, mumbling to yourself, making stupid jokes. Well, that's not how you play live. That's not how you play metal live.
Yeah.
What were the DVDs that you were watching?
Actually, the ones I watched was sort of during the Death Magnetic era. I don't know if that was when my dad bought the DVDs, like during that time period. So I think my favorite ones were like Mexico 2009. Nimes 2009 and the Big Four 2010, I think. But then, you know, I also saw the ones you mentioned, like Seattle 89 and, you know, San Diego, and also Cunning Stunts 97.
Yeah, I remember I remember loving Cunning Stunts, and another one that I really a live show of theirs that I really loved was Woodstock 99.
All right.
I always thought there was something so loose and so fucking badass about that show. And you know, again, James was sort of he wasn't quite peak James, but he was still manly James. You know, he was like the James that I worshipped as a kid.
Yeah, and exactly, because then after the DVDs, you know, when I was like 5, 6, 7, I discovered YouTube. You know, and then I could just search for every Metallica concert, and then, you know, Woodstock 99, and you know, just watched every single Metallica. And that also, I think, spiked my interest for just watching live concerts as a whole, and also valuing that in my own band. You know, I think the live thing is something that I resonate with the most, and I think that it started with Metallica.
Yeah, I feel like in the modern scene, a lot of bands actually still, to me, underestimate the strength of the live performance. Like a lot of bands, they like to play live and they go out and play shows, but I don't think that I feel like so many of them treat, no matter what they say to the contrary, so many of them treat a live show essentially like as a glorified rehearsal, and that to me it leaves as an audience member, that's not what I want to see. But I don't believe that's how you will be able to succeed as a musician. Like the days of being able to sell music and make a huge amount of money out of that. I mean, everyone knows that's over.
Yeah.
But the bands that are like, you know, at a certain level and that are able to turn this into something that they can actually make a living off of as a musician are the bands that perform to the absolute peak of their abilities, and you know, people walk out of that having had an experience that they can't recreate elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, how, because we are music fans in the core essence, you know, and that's what we felt with some of the bands, you know, and we want, you know, the ultimate compliment would be to, you know, hear somebody say that about your own band, you know. And yeah, I think what I'm drawn to with, you know, live shows, of course, you know, it's a show and all that, but you know, these bands that, you know, not to over mention Metallica, but Metallica or Dissection or whatever, you know, they just go out there with just simple clothes and just no really show, and just turns people's lives basically, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, you know, a band on stage, that's how you display the band in its core essence, you know. For us, it is us four, you know, and that's what we are on stage, you know. You can have all the layers in the studio and all the mystique in the band photos or whatever you want to do, but you know, when you're on stage, it's where it's for real, you know.
Yeah, that's where people realize that you're either super serious about what you're doing, you know, or you're just a bullshitter. And I really believe the people are drawn to, they gravitate towards music that they can be convinced by. You know, again, like if you came from a certain generation, part of the reason why a band like Deicide was as popular as they were is because everyone believed 100% that everything that Glenn said he was serious about.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I personally think part of why Marduk is such a popular band is because you know, whether they believe in any of it or not, I happen to think that they are quite serious about it. But when Mortis is on stage, what he's projecting and the way that he's delivering every single thing, I mean, you are 100% convinced.
Yeah,
there's no fucking around with this guy. Like, this isn't a show.
Exactly.
It feels authentic.
Live, and I totally agree. Yeah.
Tell me something. What was the first song that you learned to play on the guitar?
Actually, I don't know the first song, but I remember the first riff. It was surprise, Am I Evil?
Well, it was mine too, actually. I was literally about to say, but that was mine as well.
Oh, right, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. But you know, it's a pretty simple riff, and you get the sort of hard rock chord, the simple, I don't know what it's called, but you know how it goes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And, so that was the first riff. Then I learned, you know, different. I think the second one was like Master Puppets, and then it was off, you know.
Now, how much of an influence was your father being a musician on you during this time? Like, you know, when you were really, really young and you kind of still finding your feet and finding what you like and what you're interested in. Like how much of him rubbed off on you versus just you going out and discovering things organically?
Yeah, I think that his approach was not to, you know, convince me on anything, you know, or try to, you know, force the music upon me. You know, it was more of like having it casually in the room or in the house, or you know, having it played in the car, and then sort of, if I catch on, I catch on, you know, and that's what I did. But then, you know, him having a band that was, you know, active during my childhood, you know, so I've you know, when he was away on tour or whatever, you know, it's always been, you know, band aura around my family, so to say. So I'm pretty used to that sort of thing. But then, you know, of course, he showed me bands, you know, the nostalgic bands, so to say, in the beginning, the ones that you hold very dear today. You know, I wouldn't love Metallica, Paradise Lost, or Sentenced if it wasn't for him. You know, I would probably think that Sentenced was just a cheesy poster boy band, but I love them because it's nostalgia. You know. But
well, I mean, you know, you're like openly very into music that isn't necessarily music that I would expect your generation to be into. I mean, like just the name. I know again, most people could probably either know this or could put two and two together. But Sarcator, sarcophago and creator. The fact that you reference sarcophago, that instantly warms my heart. I feel like creator over the years have dropped the ball a little bit. I don't like new creator very much, but sarcophago. I mean, the first two sarcophago albums are as fucking badass as it gets.
Yeah, it is. The first record, Indri, is still one of my favorites. It's something with it. I don't know, but yeah, it was actually a song that we named Sarcator, like a working title name for the song. So it was the second one decided. We thought it sounded like sarcophago and creator. But then wanting to have that unique band name, it's sort of an endless hunt. So we had like 4 band names or 3 band names, I think, and then we just said, but this is a unique band name because you can't argue on that. That band name is the only thing that is tied to us. So we just went with that because it looked cool. Also,
it does look cool. Yeah, it looks cool and it sounds cool as well.
Yeah.
Out of interest, just backtracking a little to when you were younger, did you have any siblings, brothers, sisters?
No.
Okay, so it was always just you. Because again, I was curious if you had 3 kids in the same household, which gravitate towards dad's music and which would shy away from that. And how did you feel about your dad's the music that your dad was making? Because you obviously would have at some point heard it when you were when you were younger. You would have heard it on a regular basis. How did you feel about it?
I mean, to be honest, because you can't think that I was young and didn't appreciate blast beats and growls vocals, but to be honest, I was such I was used to it so much that didn't even think twice.
Yeah.
That was just my reference of music.
Yeah.
So I think if you start that early, it could end up like that. Because I didn't have a reference of whatever mainstream music it was, or maybe I had, but it was just music. And that sticks with me today. For me, it's only 2 types of music, and that's good and bad music. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, does your mother listen to the same kind of music, or is she into completely different stuff?
She's into a wide spectrum of music, but I think she started listening to this kind of music because of my dad, and she didn't have a choice.
My wife will never listen to my kind of music. She
Right.
comes with me to shows and things like that.
Yeah.
She never gives me a hard time about any of it. She knew what she was signing up for, but she's not going to be rocking Funeral Mist or Mayhem or anything like that at any point, mate. And my daughter she's interesting. When she was young, she was really into Pantera, and she was really into hardcore. Like if I played it in the car, she would literally tell me to keep playing it. And Walk was the big one. She would sit in the back seat of the car when she was 2.5 years old, and when Walk is finished playing, I just hear her repeat the word Walk until I stop. Well, she just goes Walk, Walk until I play it again.
Cool.
Now, unfortunately, as she's grown older, she lives with her mother, and they live a fair distance away from me. So she's now strayed from the path a little bit. It's Melanie Martinez, Olivia Rodrigo, shite like that. She's still into Chelsea Wolfe. She likes Sisters of Mercy. She likes Killing Joke. So she likes stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the really heavy stuff, if I whip on Dying Fetus, she's not quite as thrilled by that as I am.
Yeah. I would agree with her in that case.
You're not a fan of Dying Fetus?
No, not really.
Really? Oh, man. Oh, dude. No. In 5 years' time, we're going to talk again. You're going to go, hey, Jackie, I checked out Wrong One to Fuck With, and you were right. That's absolutely brilliant.
I don't know if it's like a Swedish thing or something. I don't know. But it's, that for me is like American death metal,
Yeah.
it's like a culture clash. I don't know.
But you like stuff like Deicide and Morbid Angel and things like that.
Morbid Angel, I worship to the grave, but you know, death metal is actually pretty hard for me as a whole, because you know I like the stuff that is a bit, you know, outside of you know, this goes with every genre basically, but you know, in death metal, instead of like Deicide or I don't know, Malevolent Creation or something, you know, I'm more drawn to and the same with Swedish death metal. You know, I'm not so much into like Entombed and Dismember, more into Merciless and Grotesque and like more, you know, outside stuff. And you know, with Repulsion instead of the American classic death metal bands, you know, because they're more, you know, hard to label in a way, and that sort of sparks something for me.
Well, you also mentioned Paradise Lost earlier.
Yeah,
Paradise Lost to me, firstly, one of the most important bands in my life, or actually now also probably one of my favorite bands. But I remember hearing Gothic for the first time when I was about 13 or 14 years old, and it was the first time I'd ever heard, you know, like that style of female singing going over music that is that heavy.
Yeah,
and I was just blown away. I couldn't believe that a band could do something like that. And not just do it, but make it sound as good as they were making it sound.
And that feeling is what, you know, I hunt for with my band. You know, that is what fuels me for writing a song. You know. And I want, you know, people to think of, you know, this band in that way. You know.
So, at what age did you start getting the idea to start a band, to form a band? Because you started off calling yourselves Metal Militia.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
that's at least if that's what the internet records suggest.
Yeah, I can imagine. but yeah, it started the thing is, it hasn't been like a point in time where I was like, yeah, now we have a band. But I usually say that, you know, when we rented our first rehearsal place to jam, that was, you know, when the band sort of formed, you know, and that was 2018. But, you know, before that, it has been like a very, very organic, natural just pathway. You know, as I said, I started very early and, you know, just playing on my own. But then I think in 2014, I was like 9 years old or something. I started like at a music school in my hometown. Sort of, you know, separate from your main school, just more of a like a culture center thing. And so I took guitar lessons there, and also met Jesper, the drummer, which also he took, you know, drum lessons, and then a teacher there, so that, you know, we liked Metallica. So he sort of threw us into this Metallica cover ensemble thing, and, you know, members came and then they left, and, you know, we started, you know, expanding more on covers and playing Anthrax and Slayer, you know, classic stuff. And then I think in like 2016, that was when Felix, the now bassist, joined the band, and he was the older guy, and he's 6 years older than me, which means like when I was 12 at this time, he was fucking 18, you know.
Which at that age is quite a big gap.
It is. Yeah, exactly. But, you know, I still remember, I bring this up every time because it's such, you know, a symbolic thing. But, you know, I was just listening to Metallica still at this time. But, you know, he came in with, you know, long hair, black and white, Son of Evil creator shirt, you know. He knew his shit. And he came in, and then it was like a summer break. And then when everybody came back, the cover material was completely different. It was like we did Pull the Plug with Death. We did Black Magic with Slayer. We did Dissections, The Somberlane. And actually, that's the sort of thing that sparked my interest for extreme metal. You know, that I saw, because Jesper, the drummer, had also been, you know, starting to delve into extreme metal. So I was like, I gotta catch on, you know. So yeah, I was like 12 years old at that time, and during that summer, I sort of catched up on all the 80s, 90s death metal lore.
And that's so exciting though, because like, you know, even at the age of, I'm 45 years old now, and even now, like, you know, recently myself and two guys that are members of the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse, which is kind of this, you know, this cohort of dudes, this cartel of guys that do, you know, that we all kind of work together, share share content and all that sort of stuff. We do once in a blue moon, we do something called a 666 countdown. So it's like 6 of your favorite of a particular genre, and we're busy doing working on a thrash one right now. And just going back in and listening to thrash from like the mid to late 80s, fucking hell, there's so much gold, and like you forget about some of it. But you know, I mentioned Sarcophago, then you dig into Disaster, Blood Feast, you know, the first Forbidden album, Dark Angel. I mean, I'm a huge Testament fan, so you know, Testament gets thrown in there. Like it's like almost endless how much cool stuff you can either rediscover, or you kind of find these scenes or these strands of a scene that you never quite paid attention to when you were young because maybe something else was going on at the time. Yeah. And that's like, holy shit, like there's all these bands, and you know, they had people that went to the, you know, this band. It's kind of, for me, I think it's been so much fun doing the whole thrash thing, because in some ways it kind of feels like when I was young, there's no Spotify, there's no YouTube, nothing, and you're reading on, you know, on you're reading records and CD inlays to see who they thank, so that you know what bands you need to check out next.
Exactly, yeah, that's a cool thing, because of your generation, it will probably be like that with, you know, reading thank lists and seeing other bands. But yeah, it's the same with me, you know. But maybe, you know, on like an interview on YouTube, they're referencing their influences, and that's how, you know, you sort of delve deeper. But yeah, a lot of, you know, discovering is by bands referencing other bands, because if you like that band and they sort of tell you their influences, you will sort of have a benefit of listening to, or sort of.
I was very happy as well when you said Black Magic by Slayer, because it should be written into law. Black Magic is the best Slayer song of all time, bar none. But you've mentioned Dissection quite a few times, and I get the sense that in terms of your musical evolution, they loom quite large. How old were you when you discovered their music?
Yeah, that was in the same that sort of summer, I think, or that year, like 2016 or 17. I was like 12 when that whole extreme metal thing came, and sort of Dissection was the gateway band. And I've actually seen that with a lot of, you know, friends in the same scene, that, you know, Dissection is a gateway band for many. I don't know what it is, if it's like, I don't know if it's the melodies, or I don't really know, but it is a fact, you know.
Yeah, they are a band they're remarkably easy to get into.
I think so.
But they have there's a lot going on under the surface.
Yeah,
like I remember hearing the Somberlane for the first time on. There was a song off the Somberlane on Death Is Just the Beginning, Volume 3, which was a compilation that Nuclear Blast put out. That's how I got into them. Storm of the Lights Bane, that was really my thing. Like, I loved that record. I still do today. Rain Chaos, you know, I'm of the view that should never have been made.
All right. Let's not start a fight here.
But you know what it was? So I was following along with everything that, you know, John was saying in the press. And, you know, I was like sitting there thinking to myself, oh man, we're going to get like Storm of the Lights Bane meets Burzum. Like, it's going to be fucking extreme, evil sounding shit, which is what I was really into at the time and still am. Yeah. And so when I put the album on, I was kind of like, well, this just sounds so, like, it sounds so ordinary, so normal. It was like, it's just something I could put on. And honestly, I could probably play it when my mom's in the room and she's not going to be too upset by it. Whereas, you know, if I like Storm of the Lights Bane had real edge, like a real menace to it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I remember also, I don't know if you're referencing that, but he said like in a interview from like '97 that it would go more like black metal for the next one. But in a way, for me, that he put out Rain Chaos, that isn't a black metal album. That's just rock and roll essence. That it should be unpredictable music, and that you should be like, what the fuck is going on now? That is sort of the core essence of rock and roll. Because when you think that it is heading into a direction, and you start getting framework of everything, and then it just gets elsewhere. That's for me just that fuels my fire and what we want to do with Sarcator. So yeah, I love Rain Chaos, musical wise also, but that's a matter of taste. But I think that's one of those albums that sort of riff wise, it's very simple. It's just sometimes it's just boring riffs. I mean chuggy riffs or whatever, but it's played with such he's such devoted and convinced of what he's doing. Like it that just shines over everything else basically for me.
I've always felt like bands are absolutely, and you can hear it come out in the songs. They're at their most effective when they're doing something that they're truly inspired to do. Which sounds on the surface, it sounds like, oh fucking thank you very much, Captain Obvious. But let's take an example. So the last Paradise Lost album, to me, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, sounds like a very forced record, and it's the first time they've ever sounded like that in their career. But I feel like it sounds forced because I think they wanted to make an album like the kind of gothic rock stuff that they've got on that record, but they realized with the previous stuff, or at the very least, they were self-conscious of the fact that on the previous two records, the Death Doom stuff had gone over really well with fans, really lands well when they played live. And so I feel like they kind of shoehorned some of those elements in there when that wasn't what was necessarily coming from the heart. And they've always been a band that have been very effective to me at playing doing an album that they want to do. And I've been on board, as I said, from Gothic, Shades of God, one of my favorite albums ever, Icon, incredible, Draconian Times, incredible. I was on board for one second, and I was very much on board for Host when everybody else was like, this is fucking awful, I'll never listen to Paradise Lost again. But I liked it because it sounded like it was, I mean, not to sound cheesy, but it sounded like that was coming from the heart when they played it, or when they put out that record. So so from that perspective, I get why people like Rain Chaos so much, and many of my friends have implored me to go back and check it out. So who knows?
You should.
You listen to Dying Fetus is probably not the best band to recommend to you. I'll think of a band to recommend to you, or an album to recommend to you, and then if it's particularly one that you don't like, and then I'll check out Rain Chaos, and let's see where we land on that.
Exactly. But it's just fun that you mentioned Paradise Lost, because I agree with you because you meant the album from like 2005 or something, the self-titled, right?
Oh, I love the self-titled album. You mean the one that I referenced that sounded forced to me?
Yeah, exactly.
The one that sounded forced to me was Obsidian.
Exactly, because that was
the 2020 album.
Yeah, exactly. Because I also think that when Nick started to use the growl vocals, that felt a bit off for me.
See, I think it worked on The Plague Within and on Medusa. I think it sounded perfectly fitting, because it sounded like that's what those albums should have been.
Yeah.
But with Obsidian, you've got a great song like Hope Dies Young, and then you've got like Darker Thoughts. It just sounds like or not even Darker Thoughts, sorry, Fall from Grace. It just sounds like it's just thrown together. It's not a song that flows the way their other stuff does.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Dark Thoughts song is very good, but that's also the one where he's using the clean vocals.
100%. This is the thing too with them, as I've always said. Part of what makes them brilliant is even when they're not on top of their game. Like, a good example, Believe in Nothing. It's not even close to being. It's still, in my opinion, it's still a 7 out of 10 album. There's still fucking excellent songs on that record.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't listened so much to that one, but I get what you're saying. For me, Draconian Times is my favorite one. That's where they are in their A game. it's sort of a better icon. Sort of.
Yeah, you know what? I used to always prefer Draconian Times to Icon, but over the years that's changed a little bit. And I was lucky enough to see them do Icon in its entirety 2 years ago. It's the first show I ever took my daughter to as well, and she loved it.
2 years ago?
I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah, it was 2 Decembers ago.
All right, cool.
It was December 2023, so not technically 2 years ago. It's about 15 months ago by my count. But holy shit, man, the songs on that album, if you talk about evergreen, I mean that 30 years later they still sounded absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. So,
now here's a question for you related to Dissection. And again, because I can relate to this, because when I was young and I was getting into Burzum, the whole backstory is taking place. And I remember like you're nervous listening to it because you feel like, oh, I shouldn't really be listening to it. It feels wrong to check it out.
Yeah,
it's like, in a way that makes me love it even more.
Yeah.
So around the time that you were getting into Dissection, that's just after John came out of prison, because when did he get out of prison? It was like 2000 and...
Well, what you mean, Rain Chaos?
Yeah, so he came out of prison, then did Rain Chaos.
Yeah, he came out of prison 2004, and the album came 2006. Yeah, 2005.
So how much of that was kind of in the back of your mind as you were discovering them for the first time?
With the whole prison thing, or what?
The prison thing and just the whole reputation around Dissection.
Actually, I think when I was young, I listened, or when I started listening to them, it was more of pre-prison thing, just being immersed in the Somberlane and Stormy Lights Bane. When I honor John or Dissection, it's about the music, and the rest isn't that relevant, for me.
Well, this is also the thing always with like artists and musicians generally, I've said this many times before. Kyle from Vitriol and I had a really interesting conversation about this. It's like there are certain, and historically, some of the finest artists of any kind have been deeply fucking messed up, disturbed, mentally unstable people. And so when you think of the kind of music that we listen to, I've had a lot of people on the podcast. The vast majority of them, are really nice, balanced people, like yourself. But I mean, is anybody surprised when there's a guy who's a musical genius, but he's a bit, he's just a little off?
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't be surprising, because how else would you express something as profound as like Burzum did or John did with Dissection? If there's not something that's potentially or you're not running a thin line between sanity and insanity. Because I mean, the same with you. And as I'm discovering Burzum, I didn't go, all this political stuff he's saying. He really sounds like he knows what he's talking about. I was like, that's not for me. I was fascinated by all the crazy shit that was going on in Norway, like everybody else at the time. But it's the music that just grabbed me straight away.
But I think it was fun that you mentioned that, because with Burzum and what you felt listening to them, because it was the same for me with that band, because I also got into Norwegian black metal in that same thing. Metal is a rabbit hole, and if you gaze into the abyss, it will stare back. And Burzum and Mayhem was like that illegal feeling that you're talking about.
Yeah,
I completely agree with that. I remember hearing, or I saw like a YouTube. It was like a fan video of the song War, and it had the church burnings, like a montage of that, and then that song, the vocals was like, what the fuck is happening? And being drawn to that, illegal feeling, very profound. And then I heard Death Crush, which for me, I felt that time like it was the same vocals but more disturbed, like those squeals that the desperation in Varg's voice, you had that more with Death Crush. And reading the lyrics to Chains of Gut Fuck, and you're 12 years old, that messes you up.
Yeah, you're like these aren't. I'm not going to submit this in poetry class and say I wrote that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you were getting serious about starting a band, Sarcator came off the ground. Like, did your dad give you any advice? Because you guys, the first label that you signed with was Redefining Darkness, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Did he give you any advice about the pitfalls and perils of the business?
I mean, yeah, when it comes to that, I think because it's pretty common that bands that just want to come out and play and just is happy to release an album for a label. They agree to everything, and there are a lot of business traps going on. And I think that he felt like if he sees like it being a threat, he will sort of hint that you shouldn't do this. But at the same time, he's been very he wants us to make our own mistakes. If it's not like a suicide of the band, basically, because you should learn from your own mistakes and go on your own path, basically. But I think in the beginning there, he read more sort of he read the contracts during the first 2 albums, so to say. But yeah,
well, which is completely understandable. I mean, there's big bands right now that I know for an absolute fact are trapped in their contract because of the way that it was written. They signed it when they were very young, and the label has basically become rich off of them.
Yeah,
they don't have outside of what they make in merch sales and things like that, which isn't terrible, but they don't have, relatively speaking, a pot to piss in versus what they should have had somebody smart advise them on what their contract should look like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What was, without naming the label, what was some of the crazier or the more outlandish clauses that you guys saw in contracts? Because I assume you weren't just being courted by one label.
I think, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think with the labels that we went with during all of these has been very great for us. So nothing there, but I think it's more like it isn't always a trap, but stuff that you aren't just alert of. You think it sounds cool, but you don't know what it means. Stuff like that you should really know what you're signing, even if it's good, if it sounds good. Stuff like that.
One of the like terms that I heard a while back was, did they call it like omni? It's like an omni contract. Like we control your merchandising. We do we take all the trouble off your hands. But it's like, well, I end up getting fucking 5 cents for a t-shirt.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
The other practice that I see in the music industry right now, which to me is a fucking disgrace. And if I were a manager of a band, I would, particularly once the band reaches a certain point, I would tell the venue to fucking go pound sand. Is venues taking merch cuts?
Yeah. Yeah,
that to me is just nuts. I mean, that by that principle, it's actually one of the most illogical things ever, because by that principle, a band should be able to take a cut of the bar.
Exactly.
Because you're saying, well, it's my name that's getting people to come to come to your venue. Exactly. So if they're going to buy booze, therefore I should get 20% of whatever you take of the bar.
Yeah, I agree with it. Yeah.
You guys have you guys dealt with that yourselves?
We haven't. But I don't know if we're lucky or if it's like not as common in, I don't know, Europe or something, but no really merch cut from the venues. I know that festivals sometimes take that because often they have someone that sells for you, and that makes sense. But yeah, maybe we're a bit lucky. I don't know.
Your dad calls up in advance when he knows you guys are going to play at a venue. He says, "I'm going to fuck you up if you do my boy wrong. You're going to get a fucking whipping."
Yeah.
So now let's talk about live, because you mentioned earlier, like me, you schooled in the fine arts when it comes to live performance. How old were you when you played live for the first time?
I was actually through this music school thing that I mentioned, because they had like at the end of every I don't know what it's called, but like for every school year thing, or you had like twice a year that you could stand on a stage and play. And it was not like just a platform on the ground. It was like a pretty big stage, and it's but in the audience it was basically parents, to all of the bands. But so I sort of got that. I've never been afraid on standing on stage when it started becoming for real, because we did that pretty early on. And I think the first show I was like 8 years old, maybe. Yeah.
So you were used to it from a very, very young age. What was the first big show that you guys played as Sarcator?
Oh, as Sarcator. The thing is, the first one was actually a pretty good one. The first real show, we call it, because we play like at this music school, but as Sarcator. But we can't really count that. It was like pre-pandemic. And then we got a show in like, I think it was in the end of 2021. That's where we say that this was the first show, and we got like a support slot at a bar, a bar gig. We were opening for Bombus, Swedish, I don't know what it is, but like heavy metal band. And that was like, I think 300 people in the crowd, and that's pretty good for a first, bar gig.
And I say you guys are pretty heavy to be opening for a heavy metal band.
Yeah. But it was just you agreed to everything.
Yeah. How did the audience respond to you guys?
They liked it very much. And we thought that this is how it's gonna be every show after that, but no, it wasn't. That was sort of, I don't know what it was, but the stars aligned on that show, and because that was also, nobody knew of us, not even in like a local scene or whatever. And then I don't know if they sort of resonated with like the young hunger or something. But it was very fantastic night, and good, debut show.
You've kind of hinted at it a second ago, but so more challenging shows, difficult crowds to win over. What's been the most? I'm trying to find the right word. What's been the toughest experience you've had on stage?
I mean, we've always been confident that we will always put on a show, and do our best, and even though it's like not so many people or you have a bad slot, you will still get immersed with your music, so you're pretty pretty bulletproof in that way. But one show in particular that really tested that was, did like a festival thing in Stockholm. It was like 2023. And it was like a main stage and a smaller stage, and it was indoors. But the sort of something happened, and it got sort of delayed. So the big stage played against the small stage. And if you have a bar at the big stage, the people doesn't have a reason to watch us, So I think actually I remember this because we were a bit late to that show. So when we came in, we were like, yeah, this is cool. There's the band sound checking, No, they're not sound checking. They're playing right now. And it's like 3 people in the crowd, and I'm not even, joking. And we were like, yeah, let's hope it's not like this when we go on and we see, yeah, it was like 3 people, to be honest. And that was like when I felt that I was aware of what I was doing. And that's sort of a bad thing for me, because if it's a good show, I will not remember like anything from it afterwards. I was so immersed in it, probably. But I was very aware of what I was doing, and that was I remember it to this day.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say there about the like being in that position. It takes you out of the moment, and I think being out of the moment. I mean, I just in my day job doing presentations, I know, even actually recording on the stuff for the podcast, when I'm doing the intros and the outros and all that sort of stuff, where it all fucks up is when something takes you out of the moment, and all of a sudden you become conscious, or you become aware of what you're doing or what you're saying.
That was what I was
that's the hiding to trouble. But I mean, you guys have never had like super hostile audiences. Like you were talking about Slayer earlier. This was undoubtedly a buy-on slot, but when I saw Slayer for the first time, I think you're in London, it was like 2002. They had a fucking atrocious band called Ellis opening for them, and Ellis is kind of like it's like Evanescence basically. So who on earth thought it would be a good idea to have them open for Slayer? I have no idea. But the crowd was getting so hostile eventually. They were throwing stuff at the stage, booing, and then the woman like turns her back to the audience and starts tries to carry on the show, and that just got worse. Like the audience was shouting so much at one point you couldn't even hear the band anymore. It was drowning them out completely. So nothing like that.
No,
hopefully has
really,
happened to you guys.
We'll see. Maybe on the next tour now, when it's all black metal crowd, they will hate us. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you guys should go over pretty well with that crowd because it's
I think so too. Yeah, I think people are more maybe open today in a way, or maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I think the one thing. I think people are definitely much more open, but I also think crowds are more laid back than they used to be.
Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, you took your life into your own hands. Going to a Slayer show in the 90s. I never saw them because I moved to the UK in 2002. So it's been I kind of missed probably the height of live shows and certainly of like the thrash bands.
Yeah.
But even then, I mean, Biohazard, Slayer. I'm trying to think like what bands had some really, really wild crowds. Weirdly enough, the band Amen. They kind of get lumped in with new metal. They're not really new metal. They're kind of like a punky band. I nearly saw someone in front of me nearly got trampled and killed at an Amen show. Like I literally had to pull her up and like drag her out of the audience.
Yeah.
So I've seen some wild stuff, but 1349. Their audience is a little bit older, and I feel like because people are a little older, but honestly, my theory is too because they don't have to pay for music anymore. I think that's kind of simmered the passions a little bit. Even when I was at Inferno last year, I don't think there were any pits. No one was. There was barely any headbanging. People were watching the bands, enjoying themselves.
Yeah,
but it's nothing like it used to be. Like the way it used to be was like when you see those Metallica videos. When the lights go down, you just feel this energy just rip through that venue, like and then it starts. I'll always love that because that's what I grew up with, and I do miss that at shows. Another thing that I absolutely hate, which I hope you guys don't do, is I hate when the band sound checks. I hate when I see the band before they come out on stage.
Yeah.
Like I want an intro tape. I want the lights to go down. I love that build up, that anticipation. Like, when you first see, one of the band members like striding, you kind of see the silhouette striding over the stage, and the first eruption happens, like, and then the next person. Seeing more, and not to overtalk because it's your interview, but seeing Morbid Angel play live, and Pete Sandoval comes out, sits down, like just blasts on the drums for like a couple of seconds, and then you see David walk out, and then you see Trey come out, and every single time the roar is just that much louder. There's nothing that beats that. There's nothing that beats that feeling.
And it's even worse as a band itself, going on that sort of walk of shame, to sound check and to see that everything works. It's just a simple thing like that of having like what's it called, like in front of the stage, like what's it called, like a cloak thing.
Like
stuff like that.
Curtains in front of the stage.
Exactly. I was actually at a show now. I saw Tormentor playing Stockholm.
My friend Christopher was taking photos there.
All right,
dude, that must have been a fucking killer show.
That was a fucking blast. And also, they had like I'm not so much into heavy metal, but they had like an opening band called Tyrann. It's like a Swedish heavy metal band, but it's a very much like sort of tongue-in-cheek sing-along band, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But both of them had like these curtains, and when they just, you know, revealed the band, everybody was shouting. It was, you know, more epic than the show itself.
Well, I mean, Attila is somebody who he understands showmanship. Like he understands like, how to command an audience, how to build a crowd. He's not of the Hatfield school where he's yelling at the audience, but he does it in a different way, and he's very effective at it. 2 questions I have to ask you before we wrap up. Question 1. And we can refer back to this. When you guys are like massive Metallica level, then I'm going to take this clip and I'm going to post it all over the place. But what are you like? What are the like? What's the one thing that you would love to have achieved with this band before you celebrate your 30th birthday?
With my band?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a very good question.
You've got 11 years to make it happen. It's it's a pretty
10 years now. I'm turning 20 this year.
You're 20. When do you turn 20?
I turned 20 in April.
Okay. You're going to be at Inferno?
No, I don't think so.
I would have bought you a birthday beer if you were at Inferno.
All right, we'll see. But I don't know. I think it's of course we have our dreams and all that of what we want to achieve, but right now I just see everything going in the right direction, for us as a band. Not only success wise, of getting better shows or whatever, but the companionship and the creative sessions in the band, making this music, we're all already starting to feel.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, cool.
Can you hear me?
Where were we?
The headline is going to be Mateo fucks up on stream.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm teasing. No, we were talking about like what you want to the one thing that you want to hang your hat on with this band before you turn 30.
Right. Yeah. Play with Metallica.
Have Metallica open for us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, no, I know that of course, if like you asked me this like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I would say like having a record out, so it's always that it changes, and you're never like settled. That's the thing. But as I said, I see it going in the right direction, and we're more devoted and inspired than ever, so we will see, but yeah.
So then final question, and perhaps the most critical one, because this will determine whether you get a repeat invite into the Necrosphere.
Yeah.
The off the top of your head, because the off the top of your head is the most accurate way to pull together a list. The top 5 toughest, manliest, most badass thrash albums ever made.
Thrash albums?
Yeah.
All right.
I can only comment. I can't share mine because we're going to be doing that 666 countdown special.
All right.
I can go Poser. Or I can go, yeah, he's a badass. Great choice.
That's an interesting one because
well, it could be like blackened thrash. So it could be Sarcophago. Obviously, again, that repeat invite. If you want that, Sarcophago Inri almost certainly has to be on the list.
Okay, but
no, over to you.
Yeah, let's say that one because that's easy. If we're let's say Inri with Sarcophago.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, maybe this is not in a particular order, but
No, it doesn't have to be in order.
Okay, let's throw in that one and Merciless, The Awakening. That's also like it's like a death thrash album. Then what do we got? Just because I've mentioned them. Let's say Master of Puppets with Metallica. It would be fun if you asked me about my favorite Metallica records because it wouldn't be Master of Puppets on the top list.
It's not Master of Puppets. All right, well, hold that thought. We'll get to that in a second.
I would say if in Metallica wise, I would say Black Album, Load, and maybe Master on third place. But yeah.
Wow. Well, at least you didn't say Lulu.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right.
But yeah, let's say Hell Awaits with Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final one, right?
Mm.
Thrash record. Let's say.
Bear in mind, like I said, it could be blackened thrash, it could be crossover.
Yeah.
So you got a broad spectrum to choose from.
Yeah, I have. I'm really taking this serious. Actually, I'm gonna go with Beneath the Remains. I wanted to say something more unique, but that record
That's a
is
great record.
Yeah.
You did mention Retaliation by Carnivore.
Yeah,
So this is like lifting the curtain. Here's what you could have chosen: Retaliation by Carnivore, Sadist, Chemical Exposure, Forbidden Evil, absolute genius. Demolition Hammer, Epidemic of Violence, Dark Angel, Darkness Descends, Sacrifice, Torment and Fire, Blood Feast, Kill for Pleasure. So yeah, there's some ripping stuff. Now you mentioned favorite Metallica albums, so you said Black, Load, Master of Puppets.
Yeah, that's right.
And what would be the other two?
Yeah.
And right. If you rounded out a top 5, what would be the other two?
From Metallica, let's say Justice, and Hardware.
Okay, all right.
That's just to spice it up a bit. No, or I would listen to that album instead of like Kill 'Em All or Ride Lightning.
Kill 'Em All has my favorite Metallica song on. It's not my favorite Metallica album. It's Seek and Destroy is my favorite Metallica song by miles.
My favorite Seek and Destroy is the 18-minute version from Mexico City.
Yeah, mine too, dude. If you want to see an incredible version of that song, go on YouTube and look for, say, Metallica live Milton Keynes 1992. There's a bootleg show that somebody, I don't know how they got hold of the footage, but they synced up the footage to the audio track off the soundboard. Holy Jesus, they were on fire that night. I mean, like the thing that was so great about those shows is there was this feeling of like complete chaos, like something could just, fuck up immediately. You didn't know what was going to come next. And that Milton Keynes show, they really nailed that down.
Love that one. Awesome. And that's also why I chose the Black Album, because, Metallica for me isn't at all, just albums. It's more of, there's such a, concept band phenomena, and the Black Album era for me it's the coolest, and the Load era also. So that sort of has its why I like those albums. It's just a whole era, so to say. It's
also something that you grew up with, so you have a natural affinity for it. So. Well, Matteo, I really appreciate your time, my man, and I'm really impressed with this new album. Very, very much looking forward to what you guys do in the future, because I think I really do think you guys have got the potential to be, a serious band.
Thank you very much, man.
Awesome. Take care of yourself, my man.
Cool, man. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye, man.
Yes, as we soon to vanish. Ascending mirrors that burn, reflected trails of a common splendor. Convey these words, concealed from those with the blood of heavily bodies. The treacherous dawn, long lost in the treacherous dawn. We're lost in the treacherous dawn, long lost in the treacherous void. A sword was lost, a vision was soon to vanish. Behold what has been done, the sin is done, the sin is done. Now we can turn to nothing. 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 Whoa! Feel the depths of the deep, where the void is welcoming us in. We're lost in the treacherous dawn, long lost in the treacherous dawn. We're lost in the treacherous dawn, long lost in the treacherous dawn.
Massive thank you to my guest, Mateo Tervonen. What a great guy. And I jokingly said last week that he was a delightful young man, but frankly, that is a perfect description. He's the sort of dude that from this moment that I started speaking to him, you just naturally find yourself rooting for him. And I have a feeling that we're really scratching the surface of what Mateo is going to offer this scene, and I'm excited to see what comes next in his career. Hopefully we will have him back on the show at some point in the future, but in the meantime, you just heard a song called Where the Void Begins, that of course by Sarcator, off their new album Swarming Angels and Flies. You can check it out on Century Media Records, or conveniently I have placed their Bandcamp link in the description to the podcast, so head over there, buy yourself some music, let Mateo and the gang know who it is who sent you. My friends, right before we get to the news rant, a very quick musical detour. Hell's Headbangers have been, in my opinion, on a bit of a tear of late with some of the releases that they are putting out. Last week, of course, we checked out the new Profanatica single on the news rant. This week, I wanted to share with you guys another single they've released by a band called Hexella. Hexella are going to be putting out their debut album, The Ancient Gaping Mouth, on Hell's Headbangers at a date to be confirmed, but apparently it's first half of 2025. I think the song absolutely rips, which is why I wanted to share it with you for your listening pleasure, my friends. This is Hexella with Black Earth. Black Earth by Hexella off their upcoming debut album, The Ancient Gaping Mouth. That's going to be released by Hell's Headbangers. Date to be confirmed. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to hear more of these guys. Potentially, I might see if I can get them on the podcast at some point. In the meantime, check out the Hell's Headbangers Bandcamp. I'm sharing this song for no other reason than I absolutely love it. I figured the Legion would like it also. Right now, my friends, if you find yourself in a mob of unemployed blue-haired simpletons taking photos of audience members as they're leaving a venue that hosted a band you don't agree with, you're a fucking asshole and you need to hit the bricks. Because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
So, welcome back to Into the Necrosphere and to the news rant, Giusepe Cutispoto. How's everything been going?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, and nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Everything's pretty good at the moment. Been really busy with the Corpsing EP, which is now released.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all done, which is really good. Been very positive. Done a couple of launch things like an event at Raven Records, done a launch gig at last week at the Dev. So it's finally out, and it's good that it's finally just out there after about 5 years of.
About to say it's been long gestating, I think is the way to describe it. And you guys have gone through pretty much, with the exception of you and your brother,
Yeah.
who, for anyone that doesn't know, Mick is Giuseppe's brother. Both play guitar, but I mean, you guys had an overhaul in the vocal, bass, and drums department.
Yeah, we've had a lot of ups and downs in terms of lineup, but you know, as always, we try to kick down the obstacles as they turn up, and sometimes it's difficult, but just got to keep plugging away. There's no other way of saying it, and we've managed to do that. And recently, we've actually found a new drummer, like about a week ago, which is the guy who filled in for the gig at the Dev. So, a guy called Mark Smith, who I've known personally for
I was
30
going to
years.
ask you about him because I haven't spoken to him for a long time, but I do know of him as well. And yeah, well, firstly, very, very talented drummer. Secondly, he has got great pedigree. And thirdly, he and I are connected by way of the fact that he was a member for a brief period of time of a band called Imperial Empire, and I was the vocalist for Imperial Empire back in South Africa. So
Right.
we've got that connection as well. And I think the reason for the connection ultimately is he was the drummer for a legendary UK band called Throne of Nails.
Yes.
And Lee Wallenschlager, who played in Throne of Nails, he was in Imperial Empire. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how that whole thing came to be.
Yeah, it's quite mad because before he was in Throne of Nails, me and him were in a band previous to that, which started off being called Necrosis, then the name turned to Domination, and that was just before we parted ways, me and Mark, and he formed Throne of Nails, and I went on to do Infestation. So there's a lot of history between me and him there. So it's quite cool to connect with him again, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how did it come to be that he ended up playing with you guys? Because I know he does his drumnosis,
Yeah.
it's like drum therapy and drum lessons and stuff like that. Um, and I knew he was playing in Spearhead, although they haven't put out an album for a while.
Yeah.
But how did you guys end up agreeing for him to join the band full time?
Well, basically, once we lost our previous drummer, Subash, Mark was the first one to sort of reach out to me. And he said, he said, if you guys need a hand, I could fill in or help you guys out until you find a drummer, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, great. That was, he was the very first person within like an hour that we posted that announcement. So we just, started jamming. We had about, because we had to prepare for the gig. So we had about 3 rehearsals in total. And to be honest, everything was great. We all get along very well, and we have a laugh basically. And he's a great musician as well. First and foremost. But I mean, he's a very cool person as well, and everybody
Yeah.
got on with him. And so we carried on rehearsing, and then things were working really well. And then we done the gig last week, and then I just said to him a couple of days after, I said, you fancy joining the band? And he was like, yeah, I'm in. And I was
And you
like,
said, all right, this is blood in, blood out, brother. So
absolutely, yeah. So
get
so it
ready
was
for a
like,
stomping.
yeah, exactly. So I was really, really happy because it's good because I knew him already, so that was a good thing. And also he gets on with everybody, gets on with him. We all have a good laugh, and we're all same sense of humor, and it just works. And apart from the talent, the camaraderie is very important in a band situation. It's paramount. So
Yeah. No, well, this is the thing I was going to say to you now. You're a seasoned pro in this game. When you've been doing it, I would imagine, particularly for as long as you've been, and you're at the age that you are, have that synergy and personality, being able to get on with your bandmates, I would imagine is more important than ever.
Yeah, I think. I mean, of course, talent is always going to be. You know, you need to obviously know what you're doing to a certain extent, but you know, if you put five great musicians in a room together and they're all arseholes,
Mm.
you're going to write shit music. It's not going to work,
Yeah.
no matter
Yeah,
how
I've
good they
I've
are.
I've always wondered about that when you see you read interviews or you see different things where people say, XYZ band members just can't stand the sight of each other. They're in a band, they're going on these long, and it always seems to be bigger profile bands as well. They're
Yeah,
going on these lengthy world tours where they're, forced to be in each other's company. And I can
hmm
understand there's a degree of familiarity breeding contempt. If you spend too much time confined with one person, you're going to
yeah,
start to resent them. But I've always thought to myself, that must be, to me, that would be hell on earth, having to
yes,
spend a degree of, that much time with somebody that I cannot stand the sight of.
yeah. I mean, it's like. I mean, I see what you mean about, if you're stuck in a confined space with someone, okay, I get that. But if you're in a band with someone who you can't stand, but you're still writing music and you just clearly don't get on or whatever, how and some people stay in bands for quite a long time in that scenario. And I don't understand. I couldn't do that personally.
Mm.
It's impossible because the music's going to suffer ultimately, or you end up gonna kill each other. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah,
not a good thing.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. No, 100%. All right, let's jump into some news before we get back to more corpsing questions, of which
sure.
I have many. Istapp drop a new single called Gorilla.
Right.
Istapp are a Swedish melodic black metal band. They have shared a lyric video for Gorilla, and I'm sure I've mispronounced that, but anyway, the latest new single on their oncoming studio record, Sol ter Sortna. The latter comes out on March the 6th. This is going to be their fourth album. These guys have been around since 2005. Their last album, The Insidious Star, in my opinion, a bit of a drop down in quality on Frostbitten, their 2015 album. But let's hear what they got up to on this one. I've got to say, just right from the off, I normally give these songs about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. This one,
Yeah.
I've stopped at 1 minute 52, but I was almost tempted to just let it run its course until the end. Like
Yeah.
that was a surprise.
It's got like
Fantastic production.
yeah,
Yeah, sorry, you were
yeah,
going to say?
yeah. No, I was just gonna say the production is very very cool.
Yeah,
You can hear what's going on, like with all the instruments and stuff, and I like the sort of like the vocals that are. It's like it's been recorded in a cave or inside a fucking mountain, or
yeah,
that kind of thing. But it's got like some like immortal-ish kind of early immortal kind of vibes a little bit, I think.
Definitely, I mean, tons of atmosphere. I love the drum style. So interestingly, Fjalar, the drummer, is the only remaining original member. But
Right.
he's got this very, I don't know whether you picked this up, but it feels like this very sort of intuitive drum style. You know, like you get some drummers that just, not the same style of music, but Vinnie Paul comes to mind as somebody who's got
Yeah.
this, they sort of have this very instinctive interpretation of the rhythm and of the song, and
Yeah.
they drum accordingly. And I kind of got that a little bit from him, which I
Yeah.
thought suited the song exceptionally well. You've got a
Yeah.
fucking sick riff, and your comment
Yes.
about the vocals, totally agree. I think I love the way they sound, but I love the style of them as well. There's some reasonable pedigree in this band as well,
Yeah.
in terms of Swedish underground death and black metal. Fjalar has been in Necrophagius,
Oh,
Freda, Unchained, Entrails, Gjalar, the vocalist, he's been in Skuld, Indrika. I mean, not bands I'm usually familiar with, but I mean, these guys are, they've been around the block a
yeah.
fair bit, and it
Yeah.
sounds to me like they've come good on this song. So, from my perspective, top notch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite a strong. It's a good overall. It's a really good sound because sometimes with like black metal or that kind of style, the production can be hit and miss. I mean, but
Yeah.
this is very like or not. It's quite clear and the atmosphere usually like very amazingly well produced. Black metal sometimes doesn't work for me,
Mm.
but this very much does. So it's
Yeah.
it's a good track.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's fantastic. Great way to get us started off this
Absolutely.
week.
Oh yes.
I wanted to talk to you about Levi Jackson, your new vocalist,
Yeah.
because especially listening to these new tracks that you've recorded on the new EP. I mean, that dude was a real find. And I
Yes.
wasn't, like Mark, I was aware of before. Levi I was not. I know he's been in another band previously,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, his performance on this EP I thought was sensational.
Yeah. I mean, it was. We found Levi through a mutual friend of ours who's in Adriana, who's still in Wounded Not Dead, I believe. And yeah, I mean, Levi's great. He's a guy like he's so full of energy and his vocals are very sort of like he can do various types of vocals, which perfectly fits in well with what we do. And like the death vocals, the black vocals, the spoken words, etc., etc. And on stage, his energy is brilliant. He doesn't stop moving, which is great because when you go and see a band, especially like whether it's a metal band. I always like to see a lot of front. I don't like to see a front man just standing there delivering the goods. He's just standing there like a statue, and he can't stay still, which is brilliant. I love that someone who's an out and out front man jumping about, even doing press ups on stage at some point, which is even. I
Yeah,
love that.
don't
I
go
love
wrong
that.
with press ups on stage.
That spontaneity is just it's brilliant, and it's such a joy to have him in the band. Because also he plays guitar as well. Me and him covered the lyrics on this EP, and it's great. He's got great history. Like there's another band he's got called Kithroll were
Hmm.
really good, and he was in Void a while ago, I believe, and they're another great band as well. So yeah, really happy to have him on board. A great find. Absolute gem.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at Metal Archives. I mean, he looks like he's been around the scene for a while. I've just not ever bumped into the bloke. But
Yeah,
I totally agree with you. Great find, and you and I are of the same school when it comes to our views on frontmen and on performance. To me, especially when it comes to death metal, and
yeah,
especially when it comes to death metal that has the breakdowns and the live orientation that I think Corpsing has.
yeah.
It's a crime to have a vocalist that cannot properly project that energy into the audience.
Exactly. I mean, because I've seen so many death metal bands over the years, and great vocalists as well. But when they're just standing there, like literally just going through the motions, so to speak, it's like, for such an energetic type of music, how can you stay still? I just don't understand.
Yeah.
It's always good to see a front man, trying to egg on the crowd as well, get them involved and talk to the crowd. I like all that interaction because it's good for us and it's good for the people watching.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it works both ways. If the crowd go bananas, then we're going to go more bananas than they are.
Yeah.
So it's a marriage made in heaven, really.
Let me ask you this question. In your experience, which I know is significant, makes mine pale by comparison as well. Elite of the elite tier death metal frontmen, who would be the three that immediately come to mind who you have seen perform live?
Three. I would say Frank Mullen.
That was the first name that came to mind for me as well.
Yeah, Frank Mullen. I think he was. I don't know. I'd say he's one of the. It's between him and Glenn Benton, like for me, the best ever death metal vocals ever. I'll say Frank Mullen. I would say Chris
And remember,
Barnes.
what I'm saying though is also specifically live performance because
Right.
so Glenn, I agree with you on
Yeah.
in terms of capability.
Uh,
He would actually fit into that like bracket of best ever frontmen live, but with him,
yeah.
I have found in my experience it can be a bit hit or miss.
Yeah.
If he's having an off night, everyone knows about it. If he's on song, oh my God,
Yes.
just
Exactly.
absolutely one of the best of the best. But Frank, I've seen twice.
Yes.
He has never disappointed, and he brings with him this air of just extraordinary menace when that band
Yes.
play on stage. Like you really, really get the like when I saw them at the Underworld once, and I think you were at that show as well. I mean,
Yes.
there was like a real sense of danger, like something fucked up could happen at any moment in that venue.
Yeah, I think no, Frank Mullen. He's like you can tell by the way he moves and stuff like that. He gets into it, and it's like he's working out to the music to a certain point because he really feels it. And as a front man, he's great. He's also very funny. Sometimes it was like a comedy show. It was so he could have been a stand-up comedian. I think Frank Mullen,
Well,
100%.
he's got that New York swagger, and
Yeah.
he the trash talk, the ball busting, and
Oh yeah.
he exudes that from the stage, which works really really well.
Definitely. I mean, he's a legend. Unfortunately, he's no longer singing, but I mean, what he contributed to death metal it's absolute gold.
Yeah.
Second person from all the ones I've ever seen, I was lucky enough to see Cannibal Corpse on the Bleeding tour many moons ago, and Chris Barnes, it just blew my mind. He was great. He was just like he had really good energy, and he had the swagger, as you say, that sort of like interaction with the crowd, and obviously everyone knows Chris Barnes, in Cannibal Corpse was very brilliant and a very important vocalist as well in the genre. So yeah, I would say him as well, and then God, this is quite tough actually. I'd go out on the limb and say Brett Hoffman.
Oh yeah, no, that's not a bad shout. I've seen Brett. Unfortunately, I'm going to see Malevolent Creation with three of their vocalists, Kyle, Lee, and Brett.
Yes,
I remember seeing Brett at the Underworld, and he
me
was
too.
fucking absolutely on fire from bell to bell.
Yeah, he was like, he's just like, I think he was, to me, he's just like an out and out like death metal vocalist. It's just, he wasn't necessarily like the mega deep vocals, but he was like the in between, like in between the screaming and the deep stuff. He was the perfect middle ground.
Yeah.
And his energy on stage as well. He was another one, great banter with the crowd, and he got the crowd going. I mean, ultimately, you want someone that makes you want to jump in the pit and elbow drop someone,
I would add to your list. I think
Yeah.
excellent choices all. The person I would add to the list is my man Damien Lesky of Broken Hope.
Yes.
And this is regardless of whether I knew the guy or not, but he really is. As I mentioned it to Jeremy when he was on the podcast last, he was, talk of a find, talk of a guy that it embodies the whole vibe of the band in his performance and his
Yeah.
presence on stage. I mean, Damien is second to none. And I mean, the shows I've seen, including the one where you guys opened for them, they were fucking unbelievable.
Yeah, and also a very nice guy, very cool guy, very, I had a good chat with him when we played with him and Jeremy, and they're just like really like very humble, But I do agree with you, like his like stage presence as well is very good, and he also plays in Gorgasm, I believe, isn't
Yeah,
he?
he does.
Yeah, so he's like shit hot vocalist and a shit hot guitarist, so perfect, really. Do you know what I mean? But yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. He's
No,
that's
100%.
definitely.
Okay. Next up, we've got This Gift is a Curse. They've been putting out singles consistently off this new album of theirs. All of the singles so far I thought were great. I loved the previous album that they put out. It says here, the Swedes, This Gift is a Curse is unveiling Voidbringer, the third advanced single from their soon-to-be-released fourth full-length effort. Here, check it out. Let's hear what it sounds like.
That's really it's an interesting sound. I like the build up because I didn't that sort of that build up for about a minute. I didn't know what the hell was going to come next, which was it's a good thing. But yeah, when it ripped into that sort of slowish, sludgy riff, I was like, yeah, that works. I'd say Neurosis vibes I'm picking up off that. It just gives me that kind of, definitely a bit of Neurosis. Cool production again. I like the vocals a lot. They're really cool. That sort of like that. The guy sounds like he's in absolute pain. Really cool stuff. It sounds kind of like if Napalm Death did a really slow song, it would sound similar to that. That kind of.
Napalm Death meets Neurosis
Yes.
on a dark, depressing night,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
and they have a
Yeah.
fight in the lift, and that's what happens.
Yeah. No, I mean, so their previous album, A Throne of Ash, you and I actually spoke about it when we did our 2019 best of countdown. That was on my list, and I think it was number 10 or something like that. It was a record I really enjoyed. If anybody hasn't or isn't familiar with This Gift is a Curse, a song I would strongly suggest you go and check out is the final track on A Throne of Ash, their previous album. It's called
Okay.
Wormwood Star. And that to me is an indication of what this band is capable of.
Yeah.
I like where they're going with this one. It's always hard to judge a 9-minute song of 2 minutes and 30 seconds of it. But
Right.
what I've heard to me is aligned to what they've done on the previous 2 singles they've put out. And I'm very excited to hear this. I really do feel listening to this song and listening to basically everything that This Gift is a Curse has done, to be honest, this band should be an awful lot bigger than they are. Like they kind of seem to fly under the radar for a lot of people, where
Right.
I think they bring enough to the table in terms of being unique, different styles, and a style that's very densely layered, but it's quite easy for you to get into initially.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think repeat listens provide you with more and more. Again, kind of like Neurosis. I think they should have a far bigger audience than they've got. But from my perspective, another top notch.
Yeah, I think, I mean, from that short amount of time we listened to it, they've gone from, like, obviously you start with like the atmospheric stuff, then they launch into that sludgy riff, and then it goes kind of mellow again. And it's like, but the transitions are really cool. It's not like, it all fits in and it all feels natural rather than like, oh, here's the atmospheric bit, here's the brutal bit, here's that bit. It's like it's one nice, how do you say, it's just constant. It's really cool, and they chop and change, and that's quite hard to do and make it sound cool.
That
So,
is an extremely good point, because there's a lot of bands that they do those different things, but exactly to the way you described it, it's kind of like they compartmentalize and they go, okay, this is going to be the fast part. This
yeah.
is going to be the slow part. We're going to do something a little bit more avant-garde, and it's kind of like, well, there's no ebb and flow to the song. There's no natural transition into the next thing to where that next sequence properly makes sense.
It's got
And
mayhem
I've actually
vibes.
found, in particular, in like more recent releases, seem to get that wrong. Bizarrely, as well as it's the gripe that I have with a lot of newer movies as well. Is like movies also kind of seem to be
Yeah.
compartmentalized. Like the direction style seems to be coming from people that watch too many fucking TikTok videos, and it's not like the movie doesn't have a natural rhythm of
Yeah.
its own.
It's true. I mean, it's like you can tell straight away when a band or a film, for that matter, is like, there's a lot of like maybe like directors now that are trying to do like the Tarantino sort of technique, where they start with the middle bit of the film and then they bring the beginning back, that kind of vibe. And it's like they try and do that, and they rape that to death, and and some bands do that as well. Sometimes you can tell what's coming, or it just doesn't fit in. It's like a bad jigsaw puzzle sometimes. And but this track is also, I don't know if you think, has it got mayhem vibes a little bit as well?
Yeah, there's definitely there's the sludge, there's the
Yeah.
kind of that Swans style grinding that Napalm
Yeah.
Death loves to do so much.
Yeah.
And then there's definitely a bit of black metal as well, and betraying their Swedish heritage. Not that Mayhem is from Sweden, but obviously
Yeah.
there's a pretty strong influence across the Scandinavias, and I think particularly if you're of a certain generation, there's no way if you're into metal that wasn't going to at least kind of color your songwriting a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, no, I love it. I think it's great. Just on the topic of bands that mastered the ebb and flow, few are greater masters than Akrakoka,
Oh, yes.
which is a nice segue into asking you about getting Jason on. I know he was on, and by the way, for anybody that's not following, Jason Mendonça of Akrakoka, he was on the Civilization Under Nefarious Tyrants EP as well.
Yeah.
But you got him for the opening track, and the track that I played at the very beginning of the podcast, or this episode of the podcast. Here's my question for you: Have you had any hints from him as to when a new Akrakoka is going to be released?
I've spoken to him a little bit over the last month or two. I mean, predominantly because of his involvement with the EP.
Mm.
But regarding Agacocker, he hasn't mentioned anything about anything forthcoming or anything going on. I mean, the last time they played was at the Damnation Festival when they did the Coronzon album in full, when I was lucky enough to be teching for Jason. So that was the last time they played. But me, along with everyone else that's a fan, is hoping that they would do something in the future. Because I mean, they're just a brilliant band. I mean, I'm lucky enough they're my friends as well. But at the moment, I haven't heard anything from Jason, but I really hope, I sincerely hope they do something because they're a legendary UK band. I know you're a big fan of them, obviously, as well.
No, one of my favorite bands, and I mean, I've been very open in saying Coronzon, my favorite album of all time. Like, if there's no question about it, like to me, that is the absolute best thing that has ever been released. And since 2020 or since 2003 when it came out, I've not heard a single thing that has blown me away that much and that I consistently go back to that much. I mean, it's interesting this year. It's the 20th anniversary of Words That Go Unspoken, Deeds That Go Undone. No,
Right.
no talk of any, celebration efforts for that, or them playing that album in its entirety. Which again, it'd
Mm.
be a shame if they don't do
Yeah.
that, because to me, again, Coronzon, I mean, Ghost of
Yes.
Mendes, Coronzon, Words That Go Unspoken, Deeds That Go Undone. That's a flawless run,
Yes.
as far as I'm concerned. Those three albums are 10 out of 10 records. I have a soft spot for Antichrist as well.
Yes.
I think it's an album that got a lot more hate than it should have gotten.
Hmm.
Renaissance and Extremis, not keen on, and have been less keen on as time has gone on. And I say that as a fan, like somebody
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
had extremely high expectations of it. And I mean, I've mentioned this before. I also heard the Renaissance and Extremis demos, but Jason played them to me. And hearing the demos, the album ended up coming out very, very differently to the demos. The demos sounded a lot like Words That Go Unspoken.
Yeah.
It was like in that direction. I have heard from sources that will remain unnamed that they've had an album done for a while, and there's just no decision on when and if to release it.
That's the thing. I mean, like, I've heard that as well. Like, that they were in the process, or they were actively writing, and then I didn't hear anything else more about that sort of thing. So, I mean, I'm really hoping that whatever they wrote or sees the light of day, because it's been a while now since Renaissance. But I didn't know. I totally forgot about the 20. Was it the 20th anniversary? You said of Words.
Yeah,
I
yeah, it came
mean,
out official. I mean, the release date for that was October the 10th, 2005. 2005.
right? Because it's funny because I that's one. It's funny you mentioned that because that's one album of theirs that recently I've been playing quite a bit.
Mm,
I think it's a fucking great album. I mean,
masterpiece.
it just the way it kicks off with Verdelay, and it just kicks your fucking teeth in straight away, and production's really good, and it's I'll tell well, I'll mention that to Jason next time I speak to him. I'll try and give him a little nudge. I'll say, go on, do a couple of gigs, at least for
and
that.
and wear the suits. I always felt like, again, and all of this I say with the greatest of respect, because I like Jason.
Yes.
David, I consider a friend. So it's the people in the band I have a great affinity for, and like I said, it's one of my favorite bands. But I always felt like it was a big mistake to do the comeback and not come back as they were, wearing the suits and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
The reason for that is, and again, I've mentioned this many times before, but maybe it's because I come from the Metallica 1991 era live ideal. I love professional wrestling, so the showmanship is to me is very
Right.
I mean, I think it's a critical thing. And I think I'll never forget seeing Akakaka for the first time and looking at what was going on stage and going, what the fuck is this? But it was like in the best possible way, you know. It's these dudes that come out looking like satanic Mormons, and then the hell blasting off of that stage. Like if you take away an element of that, it would be like Iron Maiden going on tour and going, no Eddie on stage. We don't need him.
Of course.
There's just certain things that it's in the DNA of the band. Don't fuck with it.
It's mad you say that, because I remember like the very first time I met Akakaka, I was in Infestation. This was 98, I think it was, I believe. And their second ever gig was with us in Infestation at the time. And so we were busy sound checking for the gig. This was at the Red Eye, the Devil's Church days. And we're sound checking, and all of a sudden, 4 or 5 guys with suits walk into the venue. And we were sound checking, and we've all turned around and gone, what the fuck's going on here?
Are we about to be arrested?
We're like, fuck, man. I'm like, there's 4 guys in suits just watching us like that. And then we finished the song, and then they give us a round of applause. And I was like, that's different. And then since then, we been mates for the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years or whatever. But it was mad, that, like you're saying about that shock thing. And, we see the suits and you see that and you think, what the fuck's going on? But it's great. I think it's brilliant. That was a great gimmick, or whatever. If you want to call it a gimmick or style or whatever, but it was fantastic.
It's exactly the same to me as, there's a vibe when Marduk go on stage with their style of corpse paint, they're really like filthy, smeared, the crazy like atmospheric ambient stuff playing in the background, all of that stuff, it all contributes to the Marduk live experience.
Absolutely.
Everything about Akakaka in the suits, Jason's attitude, all that sort of stuff, all of that makes up the Akakaka live experience. And I mean, that's what helps create the magic. Can't mess with that. It's just not. It's not the same. And again, I'm saying this as a fan, but I'm also saying this from the perspective of if I were a manager advising them, I would have said, like, if you're going to come back guns blazing, and if you're going to make a prog album, do it as a side project. You don't have to repeat yourself, but people buy into you guys for the brutal, heavy, evil, dark shit.
Yeah.
If you're not inspired to do that anymore, then you need to let the band be.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when they did that Coronzon show, they were all like decked out in shirts and ties and stuff like that. So it was like a nod back to the old days.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool, David's behind the kit with his shirt and tie and his braces, and he's fucking blasting like a lunatic, and it was great to see that again, by the end of the set, the ties were off and they were, they were flying, but I do understand what you mean is, that image really captivated the audience,
Yeah.
It really did,
Because it was something that was so different
from
anything else that was going on.
Absolutely.
And it presented them as uniquely British.
Yes.
That's also something that's very important. I feel like there was a period of time in the UK when UK music was, the UK had a musical identity. And I feel like around the late 90s with new metal and everything else, that identity started to get a little unraveled.
Yes.
And it was for bands like Akakaka to come in and do something that was, I mean, not necessarily sounding like Black Sabbath or Motorhead, but it was for its own time and in its own way, it was uniquely British, and that's very important to me. It's in the same way that when I hear a band from Poland, I want to hear something that retains that Polish identity.
Yes.
Same with France. Same with every great metal country on the face of the planet, including the US. Certainly Australia, places like that.
Of course. Absolutely.
On the topic of Poland, Dormant Ordeal revealed new album details and first single. The Polish death metal duo Dormant Ordeal has released their first new single, Halo of Bones. Quite a cool name for a song.
Yes.
The track is set to appear on their upcoming album, Tooth and Nail, which will be out on April the 18th via Willowtip Records. You can stream it below. The first single, Halo of Bones, was the first song written for the album. Guitarist Magic Nishirok notes it was composed shortly after the release of 2021's The Grand Scheme of Things and features the outstanding work of Jason Westmoreland, who's a fucking beast of a drummer who played drums on the whole album. Blah, blah, blah. All right, let's hear what it sounds like. Who does that remind you of?
First thoughts would be Behemoth, early Behemoth. Well, before the Satanist Behemoth.
Yeah, a little bit maybe.
Like the vocals, especially. But I'm trying to think. I mean, first of all, I fucking love it. I think it's
I'll agree with you right from the out. That's fucking brilliant.
Oh yes, 100%.
There's something. It reminds me of something. I'm just trying to think what the band is.
I know. I mean, I'm trying to place like while listening to it, I'm thinking, who can I sort of say like, oh, it's in a vein of etc. etc. But I just can't because there's a lot going on in that track as well. It's not like your I don't know your standard death metal. It's quite out there. It's very atmospheric as well, and the drumming's fucking phenomenal. Like,
okay, I think his name is pronounced Jason Westmoreland. I might be wrong. It might be Cason, but regardless, he's a fucking exceptional drummer. So yeah, no, I'm not surprised about that. As soon as the song started and I heard the drums, I was like, okay, there we go.
Yeah, yeah. I think he played in Vitriol and Hate Eternal. I think that guy.
Yeah. I was about to say. I think it's Hate Eternal. I think he might have done some live drumming for Suffocation as well.
Possibly.
He's done a lot of different things, and he's kind of become like the US Robin Stone, from what I can tell. Where he's session drums for a lot of bands, but yeah, he is. I mean, absolute tier one.
Oh yeah, I mean he's like once the blasting kicked in, I thought, okay, this guy knows what he's doing 100%. It's funny because when you mentioned that we're going to listen to this, this is a band that has been on my radar. Like I don't know how, I can't remember how I heard of them, but I think I was going through Spotify and one of their songs popped up, and straight away I was like, oh, I like this a lot. And I actually had forgotten about them, and now obviously that you've played that, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to be getting on that. I think because it's very good. You know,
Yeah, I
really
mean,
good sound.
there's not a note out of place here. Riff fucking beastly.
Oh yeah,
I mean, the whole vibe of the song is beastly. Vocals are
yes,
excellent. Drumming is insane. Yeah, I mean, this is fantastic. Like all elite of the elite death metal.
yes.
And this has not been a band that's been on my radar. However, Cursebinder, the black metal band that features the vocalist, that I really like. And they put out their debut album 2 years ago. It's called Drifting, for anybody that
Okay,
hasn't checked it out yet. Very,
right.
very, very good record.
Where are these guys from, by the way?
Poland.
Oh, Poland. Okay,
Yeah.
blimey. Another great Poland. You know, I mean, there's some great metal coming out of that country for sure.
There's a conveyor belt in that country at the moment of just fucking brilliant, brilliant bands.
Oh
But
yeah,
I can see what you mean a little bit with the connection to Behemoth. But I would say, you know it reminds me of. Sorry, it just Hate Eternal. Like there is definitely a Hate Eternal
yeah.
vibe to it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. That sort of really punishing, like unrelenting, sort of like they don't even stop to have a cup of tea, basically.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's
no,
just like
100%.
they're like fucking. Once they're off, it's like the green light, and it's like fucking go. You know, it's great. I mean, and it's not boring because sometimes when bands play like fast all the time, some bands can get really boring. But this no
Yeah.
way, 'cause there's a lot going on there. Do you know what I mean? The riffs are like they're quite out there as well. You know, atmospheric kind of riffs as well, which is very very cool. You know.
Yeah, it kind of harkens back to that, where when I felt like Hate Eternal's songwriting became a little bit more balanced.
Yeah.
Upon Desolate Sands, Infernus, and Phoenix Amongst the Ashes, their last three records. And obviously, it's been a while since the last Hate Eternal record, so there's a
Oh
void
yeah.
there, and I don't hate the fact that Dormant Ordeal wants to fill it. I wouldn't hate the fact that any band steps up and wants to fill the void left by Behemoth, because the last song they put out, much like the last album, is atrocious.
Yeah. The videos are cool, but the songs I don't think. I mean, it's not for me. I mean,
No,
I mean, I think after the Satanist, I think they changed a lot. I mean, I like the early stuff. I mean, because
yeah,
Demigod and yeah, the one after that, I believe I can't remember. Was it the Apostasy or whatever it
the
was? Yeah,
Apostasy, yeah.
great albums. But yeah, this Dormant Ordeal is I'll definitely be like delving into that for sure,
Yeah.
100%.
Dormant Ordeal are the real deal. All
Yes.
right, let's check out Gates to Hell. So they've debuted a new single called Crazed Killer. Kentucky-based Gates to Hell are back to present you with a music video for Crazed Killer, the second new single off their sophomore LP, Death Comes to All. The latter officially drops on March the 21st via Nuclear Blast Records. Let's hear what it sounds like. I'm pretty surprised to hear a band like that signed to Nuclear Blast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not bad. It's actually, I mean, it's actually pretty decent. I just don't think it's a It feels to me like a band that is like an album or two away from doing something big and something interesting. You know, it's like those bands that you
Yeah.
hear on. Remember the Fear Candy CDs that they used to put out with
Oh, Terrorizer.
Terrorizer? You know,
Yeah,
you'd
yeah.
hear a lot of bands like that where you can tell there's a lot of talent there,
Yes.
but they just not quite at the level yet where it's going to be like, well, this is a contender for the anybody's album of the year list. Like this
Yeah.
sounds decent to me, but it doesn't sound like something that I'm gonna necessarily want to go back and listen to.
Yeah, I think I mean it's got a lot of potential. I
Yeah,
think because they've got quite a there's a lot of things going on in that track. You've got the death metal element, you've got the hardcore element, you've got the vocals are like that sort of hardcorey sort of like, shouty kind of vocals, and it reminded me a bit in the beginning of what's that band? Discarnate.
yeah.
That kind of groove, really groove laden kind of stuff, and then it sort of broke down into like suffocation breakdown kind of stuff. So there's a lot going on there, but yeah, it's definitely got potential. I
It's got
mean,
potential, but it also they try and I think fit too much into
yes,
too short a period of time. Like we listened to 60 seconds of that song. It's a minute 43. I
right,
kind of feel like back to the point we were making earlier. You need to let certain sequences in the song breathe and find
absolutely,
find their natural segue into whatever you want to do next.
of course,
Yeah, it kind of sounds like copy and paste of
yeah.
okay, these are some good ideas. They will all work together in one song if we edit them, if we splice them in the right way.
hmm It's all about the arrangements. I mean, you can take every riff in that song and make it work really well, but you've got to be, like you said, it's got to breathe. You've got to give space to if you've got a great breakdown, then rinse the fuck out of it, a bit more rather than like 10 seconds, because you get into it and then you chop and you go into a blast beat and you're like, oh fucking hell. But
On
yeah.
the new Corpsing EP, you guys also have, in addition to Jason, you also have the great Luke LeMay. How
Yeah.
did that come to be? And again, anybody who doesn't know, which honestly, if you're listening to the news rant and you don't know this, you have stumbled onto this podcast by mistake. But Luke LeMay is of the legendary Gorguts. Yeah, how did that happen?
Well, originally, for the last Corpsing album, Civilization album, we had plans to try and get him to do vocals on a song there, but that didn't happen. Um, so fast forward to last year, and I sort of reached out to I mean, to I've got a mutual friend, a good friend of mine who texts for Gorguts when they tour and stuff like that. So I just reached out to him and I said, look, I just want to I'd love to get Luke to do a song. I mean, Luke for me is like one of my biggest influences.
Mm.
As a guitarist and what he's done. He's one of my heroes. To put it very simply, and to get him on board was great. I mean, I managed to do it. Because Luke's a very busy guy as well. And yeah, I mean, once he got in touch with me, he was like, "Oh, do you still want me to do vocals?" I'm like, "Fucking yeah, mate." I'm like, "Wow." And he was
So
great.
he offered to do vocals when you connected with him.
Yeah, because I put the idea
That's
to him,
awesome.
and then he went and he said, "Oh," because he didn't get back to me for a while because he was very busy with other stuff, and then he said, "Oh, do you still want me to do vocals?" I'm like, "Fucking 300%," like. So, and that was really cool. And, dealing with him and, communicating with him was very, very good. He's a very
Mm.
humble guy and, really nice to chat to and, very thorough. When it comes to the lyrics, he was very, and he said that he loves doing collaborations. He likes doing that and very nice to work with. And it was truly an honor to have him on board. And he done a fucking great job on the track. I mean, we're all everyone in the band was just blown away. We were like, fucking hell. It's nice to have that, like one of your inspirations singing on one of your songs. It's a very, very nice thing. It's priceless for me.
Dude, can you just imagine? And I'm sure this has happened. you know, someone somewhere reaches out to somebody who's like a, you know, total musical hero of theirs. Person agrees to do, you know, guest vocals or guest guitar solo. You get it back, and it's like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
It wasn't guest vocals or anything like this, but Aaron from Wolves in the Throne Room was telling me that, and he didn't want to mention the producer's name, but they had worked on their previous album to get a producer that's apparently very big name that always wanted to work with him. You know, he was on the list of, like, I think it wasn't even for production. They were going to use him for engineering. Like, dude, they desperately wanted to work with, and he said he got the masters back, and he said his heart just sank. He was like, this is complete garbage.
Oh man.
So yeah, can you just imagine? But yeah, no, Luke did not let you down, nor did Jason.
No. I mean, you know, fair play to both of them. I mean, they delivered big time. You know, I mean, it was quite funny because when I said to Jason, I said, you know, can you up for delivering a nice face melter solo? And he was like, yeah, 100%. You know, so it was great to have him as well. You know, but both those guys. I mean, you know, Jason's a dear friend of mine, and Luke's my hero, so that's just perfect, you know, having them on the album, you know what I mean, on the EP, sorry, and yeah, it just adds that, you know, little bit of extra spice to it as well. I think it's a nice little touch, you know. It's nice to have that, you know, very privileged, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's also it's kind of a nice way to re-announce the band, because you know, that is what you're doing in a sense. You've got a new vocalist, new drummer, new bassist, you know, new vibe to the band. It still sounds like Corpsing, but you can definitely hear you've taken your sound forward. And then to have, you know, two dudes that are beloved in you know, the right scenes. That's a brilliant way to go. Like, we're back.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. I mean, I think, you know, an EP was the right move to do, sort of like you say, like reintroduce, you know, like a 4 songs, you know, like a nice short release, and then that will set us up nicely. Hopefully, you know, like, do a full length album. You know, that's the next step, I think, for us to do like a full length album with this lineup, and, you know, just keep going forward. But yeah, you know, it's good. You know, life is good with Corpsing, which is, you know, very beneficial.
Good. Headline year, Ministry to release the Squirrely Years Revisited in March. Proof that when you've run out of ideas, we can always go back to re-recording your first album. Industrial Metal Unity Ministry are releasing a new music output, the Squirrely Years Revisited, on March the 28th via Cleopatra Records. It's a collection of re-recorded songs from the band's early days, including those from the first 2 albums, with Sympathy and Twitch. I'm actually reasonably looking forward to that, because I like those albums. I like Ministry very, very much, up to and including Filth Pig. Right. After that, I mean, I as a fan, I even had some love for the Bush trilogy, but beyond that, it's become increasingly unlistenable, as I've said on the podcast before, and it breaks my heart, because I've always thought that it was a superb band. Like, Al used to be, in terms of as a creative force in the early 90s, late 80s, I mean, he was just absolutely on fire.
Yes.
And to see him degenerate into the, you know, musical version of the Rachel Maddow show as he has become now, it's breaks my heart. But moving on to something a little heavier, Legion announced new album details. They've released a music video as well. Melodic technical death metal band Legion has announced their new album, The Ossuary Lens, will be released on April the 4th via Metal Blade Records. To mark the occasion, the Colorado-based quintet have unveiled a new music video for their track Driftwood, which you can watch below. I think the thing that impressed me most about Legion was a video that they did where their vocalist did a song live in the New York subway. And that's been about, I've never really been that big of a fan of them beside that video, but let's hear what Driftwood sounds like. Iridescent, which was a single they put out, I think last year. I think it was either Iridescent or Inhumation. When they announced that Ezra Haynes had come back to the band, they put out a single, and I really liked that single.
Mm-hmm.
This is a load of shit, in my opinion. It's clean singing, death metal.
Yeah.
I don't like technical death metal, period. To me, it has to be about the roughness and toughness.
Of course.
When you jerking off on your guitar rather than focusing on making beastly music, there's a problem. But as soon as that clean singing came in, that to me that's a disqualifier. What are your? I know you're a little. I'm like, knowing your taste as I've seen you post on Facebook and stuff like that. I think you're possibly a little less hardline on that than I am. But what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, when it started, I mean, when it kicked off, I mean, it was. I could tell there was a lot of obviously the technical riffs, that was very very prevalent, but it reminded me straight away of like in the vein of like Revocation, a little bit like the technicality, because but it didn't keep my interest. And I agree, when the clean singing came in, I was not expecting that. That's for sure, because it was going on a certain path and stuff. I mean, the technicality, I mean, I like it, but in short bursts, let's say, sort of thing. I mean, but that one was, yeah, I think it was okay, but I mean, it's not, I wouldn't sort of like, I would have turned the song off after like, shortly after the clean singing started. And plus I thought the production was quite thin, very sort of tinny.
It sounded extremely. I'm trying to find a word here, but it sounded extremely produced. What I mean? It's like, it is just a little too slick. Like kind of with everything of the song, it's too slick. I'm not opposed to clean vocals either. I don't like clean vocals that are that heavily produced. And I mean, there's clearly a bit of auto tune that's used there. That's just not for me what death metal should be about. Death metal should be nasty and foul, mean, aggressive. This to me, there's nothing of those elements in this song that's in any way convincing.
Yeah, I mean, it needed like the production wise, it needed a bit more meat and potatoes, let's say.
Yeah.
The production.
It's a shame too, because that single they put out when Ezra came out, I remember listening to it on the news rant. And really enjoying it, and thinking, okay, this is quite a good return to form for the band. So I don't understand bands that go this direction, and frankly, I don't really know their previous records all that well. So it may very well be that they've always had the clean singing and things like that. But there's a lot of bands that do this, where they make super heavy music and then they start adding more accessible elements in it. You would imagine ostensibly with the intention of attracting a bigger audience. And I've always listened to that and I've gone, how big of an audience do you really think you're going to attract here? Versus what's the net gain of this versus the number of older fans that you're just going to alienate and piss off? Guerrilla were a great example of that last year. And I still hold by that contention. Obviously, I've seen the album appear on a lot of best of lists, but my view has always been you had a very, very passionate fan base. And honestly speaking, most of that fan base that I know, including me, heard this new album. And it's not even this that we didn't like it. We're completely indifferent to it. So you've lost that, that level of engagement and that level of enthusiasm that you had for your band. That's now waned.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to attract a few new Johnny-come-latelys, but they're not going to be...
Exactly.
I don't personally think that's the foundation that you build a band from, a successful band.
No, of course. I mean, especially when you've got a genre like like death metal. Let's say you've got, I don't know, let's say for argument's sake, you've got, let's say Broken Hope, you've got that kind of vein going on. And then they're ripping through a song and then clean vocals come in.
Jesus, can you just imagine Damien hitting the auto-tune pedal and he starts belting out a crooning clean chorus.
That's like the same thing. That's the same effect as like, being punched in the face by Mike Tyson. It's like, what the fuck, And so I think some things clearly don't work in certain genres. When people try too hard to, I don't know if they're trying to like be more successful or whatever it is, or trying to be different, but some things just don't work. I mean, death metal, you know, and in death metal, it's you can fuck about. There's, you know, you can fuck about quite a lot in death metal, but you've got to know what you're doing, if that makes sense, you know, because to make it sound really cool without making it sound like, oh, there's a death metal bit and then there's like an acoustic bit. You know what I mean? It's like two different worlds in one song sometimes doesn't work, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, I've got the perfect antidote to conclude our or this episode. Many of the Legion are great fans of the Antichrist Imperium. Frankly speaking, if you're not, you need to fucking grow up and you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Absolutely.
But most of you might not have heard the demo for the song Kill for Satan. I have dug it up and we're going to finish off this episode with that. Giuseppe, I want to say thank you so much to you for your time. I want to say thank you very much to Matteo for his time. Also want to say thank you very much to everybody who's listened right up until the very end. As I said, at the end of every episode, roughness and toughness only. None more tough and rough than Kill for Satan, the demo version by Antichrist Imperium. Legion, whatever it is that you are doing and wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.